What is the funniest thing you have ever heard in a wedding speech? I'll start. My wife's best friend maid of honor called me the wrong name in her toast. The name she called out, my wife's ex-boyfriend. I laughed it off at the time, but to be honest I was pretty humiliated. Best man. And now that you're married man, I think we should make an agreement. I'll stop hitting on your sister if you'll stop hitting on my mom. Groom shoots out of his seat and yells, not a chance in heck. Twist, they're brothers. My sister got married in a small Canadian Mennonite community. The groom's best man, Josh, was black. Josh started off his speech by saying, "I'm Josh, the one you have been staring at all day." Everybody laughed so hard. That's pretty dang funny. My brother was the best man at his friend's wedding. His quote at the end was, "I'd like to give you relationship advice, but what do I know? I'm single and have a cat." Epic, funny, and also flagging up to all the single women that not only is he an eligible bachelor, but also an animal lover. They love that crap. I shoot a lot of weddings, but the best one I heard was, "Well, she's moving in with Dave now, so it looks like all the ladies will have to give up their keys to your place." Silence. Ladies, I'm not kidding. Give them up. Every woman in the place gets up, walks to the head table, and drops a key in front of him. The last one was a very old family friend who, with her back to everyone, opens her blouse and flashes the guy. It ends up, she was wearing a shirt underneath that said, "Everyone thinks I'm flashing you right now." My best man pulled this at my wedding. The second to last person to bring me a key was my mother-in-law. The last person was a dude. I had tears in my eyes from laughing so hard. My ex-brother-in-law opened with, "I was nervous about this speech so I just prepared a few lines." After snorting them, I got to work with the writing, or words to that effect. I think I was the only person laughing. I hope I remember this one for the future. Two of my best friends got married about a month ago. Another friend of mine gave the opening speech at the reception and began with this line. A wise man once said, "Love is like a fart. If you have to force it, it's probably poop." After the crowd was done laughing hysterically, he somehow found a way to make the quote heartwarmingly relevant to their relationship. Yours is a love that fills the room silently. Bride and groom speech at the end of the night. Bride gets teary-eyed talking about her mom, hands the speech paper to the groom. Groom reading the next line, "I wish I could be half the wife and mother that you are." This was in their handwritten vows, the groom said, "and absolutely under no circumstances are you allowed to have more than 8 cats, ever." My dad capped it at 2. At a friend's wedding and her husband was some crewman on a submarine. Some of the guys read out some letters for people who couldn't make it. His captain said, "Seaman, report depth and position at 200 hours. At a friend of mine's wedding, the best man started the speech by talking about how the bride didn't really like him all that much, and that when anybody met him and the groom at the same time they thought they were gay together and that he was going to miss that. Being asked to serve as best man is a bit like being asked to make love to the queen. It's an incredible honor, but no one wants to do it. For some reason I read that in Jeremy Clarkson's voice. Can't remember where I heard this. Me and groom have been friends for a long time, but he had some trouble finding a best man. He first asked his richest friend to be his best man, but he said no. Then he asked his funniest friend to be his best man, but he said no. He then asked his best looking friend to be the best man, but even he said no. Then he asked me, and after turning him down the first 3 times I couldn't refuse again. A friend of mine took a folded up piece of paper out of his pocket and began to read. Sodomy is defined by Webster's as, then paused and said, "Oh, sorry, wrong speech." Folded it up, stuffed it in his pocket, took out his real speech and began. The bride was furious. She later approached my friend and shouted, "You said sodomy on my wedding video." Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today to recognize something magical, something that has seemingly disappeared in our society, something so rare and beautiful. We have come together to partake and share in the joy it gives off. I am of course talking about the open bar. Funniest post in the thread thus far. The main coordinator was Indian, so when he first started announcing, he stated groom's name couldn't afford a white person to speak here today, so he outsourced it to me. My cousin's wedding was on the 20th of June. Her dad's opening line: "As you know, today is the summer solstice, which means it's the longest day of the year, but don't forget this important piece of information." A few seconds pause. "It's also the shortest night." Best awkward hilarious opening line ever made by a father at his daughter's wedding. My best man was my roommate in college. He told a story about when he knew my wife and I were right for each other. He had come home from class and noticed the dorm lights were off but could hear slight mumbling inside from presumable me and my girlfriend. He entered to find us on the bed at the far end of the room. At this point I felt super awkward, as did many of the audience listening. But when he got closer, he noticed that we were side by side with a Game Boy in each of our hands playing Pokemon. That is one of the nerdiest and sweetest things I have ever read. I was the best man at my buddy's wedding this summer. I closed with "A lot of you don't know me, but I've spent my time in college studying mathematics, specifically the field of statistics. I want you guys to look each other in the eyes. You are now looking at the person who, statistically speaking, is most likely to murder you." My cousin parroted the speech that the impressive clergyman gave during the wedding scene of The Princess Bride. Only a couple people under 40 got it. My mother whispered in my ear, "Oh my god, I think Michael is having a stroke." This is a tough call. There's the chance it will fly over several heads. Further, there's a good chance that those who will understand the reference have already heard it at 5 other weddings. Lastly, you rush a miracle man, you get rotten miracles. In a recent wedding I went to, during the reception afterwards, the groom, who's universally known to us, friends of the bride, to be an awful singer, asks for attention and proceeds to give a speech similar to this. "Okay, so, after knowing bride for 5 years and marrying her an hour ago, I feel it's finally time to let her know my biggest secret ever, and one I wish to share with all of you. One secret only my closest friends know, and now I wish that all of my wife's friends know, too." Cue in Stairway to Heaven, to which he sang perfectly, like a true cover. Much to my friends, the bride, joy and extreme surprise. Turns out, the day they met, he had a sore throat and couldn't sing, and just made a fool of himself. So, right then and there he had the idea, and the balls, to hide the fact that he could probably let crowd singing, and only reveal it on the most interesting moment, to which he waited for 5 years, and had his side of friends swear to his secret too, like, boss. This is neat. When I was best man, I rewrote Dr. Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech to show how nobody ever thought the groom would find a woman to marry him. Example, 28 years later, Jason was still not betrothed. 28 years later, Jason was still sadly crippled by the manacles of poor hygiene and the chains of early 90s fashion sense. It took me weeks of practice to try and capture the cadence, but I think I did alright. The best part was watching everyone in the wedding party slowly realize what I was doing. I got crickets for about 2 minutes but pushed on through to "married at last." Married at last. Thanks Stacy Almighty. Married at last. Edit. Crappy spelling. I was at a wedding when the best man concluded his speech saying, "As you might know, I'm here with my wonderful girlfriend. We've been together for 5 years now and, well, I've had a few drinks, but I hope you will indulge me if I ask her a very special question." All this time he's been reaching into his pocket and I could see from his girlfriend's face she genuinely believed he was working up to a proposal. He then pulls his car keys out of his pocket and says, "I'm a bit love, can you drive me home?" The girlfriend walks out of the room. The guests are in uproar. The guys are all in hysterics and the women are all horrified. Quite a night. After the best man ended his speech with, "And I hope all your ups and downs are between the bed sheets," our pastor said, "I hope some of your ups and downs are in the church pews. It's disrespectful to have sex in a church." This isn't really from a speech, but there was a wedding where the bride and groom had gone to the same high school, and for a band they got a bunch of guys who had all been in a band together at the same school. So the best man was doing his speech, which was kind of a roast of the groom. And when he got to the end of his material and the laughter and applause and woos died down, he said something like, Anyway, he's really lucky to have reeled in a girl like M. And the bride of course went red and people nodded approvingly. That's when the guy behind the drums decided to inform one of the other guys that he had fricked the chick. But, probably because he wasn't the lead singer, he forgot his microphone on and it was still hooked up to go straight into the speakers. I went as someone's date to a wedding a few years ago. I only knew the groom marginally well. All of his buddies were not fans of the bride, whom he had met on a dating site. We, the groom's side, all knew of the circumstances of their meeting. The bride, unbeknownst to the majority of us, had not told most of her family that piece of information out of embarrassment. This was a year or so before sites like Cupid or Match.com really made internet dating a social norm, but after eHarmony started their televised ad campaign. So the sisters of the bride delivered a sentimental speech with lines like "We never thought Kimmy would meet a guy like Jared," etc. When it was the best man's turn, the groomsmen had set it up with the DJ to play that classic song from the eHarmony commercials, "This Will Be an Everlasting Love," Natalie Cole, intermittently throughout the speech for punctuation. The bride was fuming while the audience, at least those aware of how they met, gave a standing ovation through tears of laughter. TLDR. Bride lied about meeting groom online. Outed by groomsmen playing a eHarmony commercial song. I went to an Indian arranged wedding once and everyone insisted that the groom would speak a few words. He was reluctant at first, but he finally took the mic and looked straight at his bride and said, "Today I shall devaginize you." The bride's father was so pissed. They later ended up getting divorced. Fortunately, because the guy became a psycho nut job. I am Indian and I read this in a stereotypical Indian accent. I am giving a speech at a wedding in a couple of weeks. Just so everyone knows, I'm stealing all your stuff. Good work. Ditto. I was best man at my friend's wedding. When it came time for my speech, I pulled a paper out of my pocket and began reading about what a wonderful husband he was going to be, how he was loyal, handsome, kind, how he was loved by everyone, Then, I squinted at the paper, stumbled a little over the words, turned to him, handed him the paper and announced, "I can't read your handwriting." Brought the house down. Haha, I'm gonna use it at my wedding and talk about my wife to be. Thanks. At a recent wedding, the best man ended his speech with, "And when the wind blows hard and the sky is black, ducks fly together." Emilio. My best man started with, "Fornication, silence, cough, forny, cough, for an occasion, such as this, I like to start with a joke, laughs all around." I was maid of honor at my best friend's wedding back in March and the best man started his speech like this. Luckily I made my speech first so I didn't have to follow him. A guy's great uncle did an impromptu speech. He had had a stroke years earlier and no one could understand a freaking word he was saying. Nothing. It was garbled, much like his tongue was too fat to enunciate a single word. Then towards the end of his speech he pauses, says freaking crap, makes one last blue blue glob glub mug bug mushy mouthful of marbles sentence and sits down. It was a scene out of a movie. Stunned silence, an awkward cough in the back. Then I just start clapping, slowly at first and awkwardly, then everyone else politely joins. The looks on all of our faces is one of utter bewilderment. TL. Dr. Old Mushmouth McGee great uncle who had a bad stroke just made a 2-minute speech and the only intelligible words in all of it were freaking crap shortly before he finished. Everyone claps anyways. That was some authentic frontier gibberish. I'm gonna take a chance and toot my own horn. Background. My sister and I were born 3 years apart to the day, me being the eldest. For her wedding I was asked to give a quick speech, so I thought I'd use this factoid as my opener, telling absolutely no one in advance. On my 3rd birthday my parents got me a sister. I wanted a fire truck. One of my sisters was born 10 years after me to the day and you have just given me a great line to use. You have my thanks. My brother began his speech as the best man. I'd like to make a toast, then pulled out a toaster. Only the groom and I laughed, but that's who the speech is for, anyway, right? Your username is very disconcerting in context. Not a speech per se, but I was attending my boss's wedding. My boss, let's call him Marv, had a son named Mike that I was good friends with at the time. I was sitting at the same table as Mike at the reception. At one point, The new bride's brother grabbed a wireless microphone and started going from table to table. He'd go up to different friends' family members and ask them to recount a favorite memory of Marvin or his bride. Let's call her Mary, just to keep the whole thing going. Eventually the dude arrives at our table and sticks the microphone in my buddy Mike's face. Now, anyone who knows Mike, which dude did not, knows that he is somewhat blunt, in that he sugarcoats nothing. He speaks his mind and doesn't care what other people think about it. Right away, several of the people around the table start shaking their heads no and warning dude to pick someone else. Dude with the microphone ignores the warnings and asks Mike, where did Marv and Mary first meet? Now, as it turns out, even though Marv and Mary were in their 50s, they had known each other over 30 years ago. Back when Marv was still in his first marriage. His first wife was Mike's mother. Well, said Mike, grabbing the microphone from the hapless dude. Let's see. Marv and Mary first met over 30 years ago. They got along together quite well, and despite the fact that Marv was married to my mother at the time, he had a 6-month-long affair with Mary that ended up driving my mother to drink, splitting up their relationship, and making my childhood a living heck. Stunned silence throughout the entire hall. The only sound you could hear was the chocolate fountain, bubbling and burping as everyone in the room went to great pains not to make eye contact with anyone else. I chose this moment. To be fair, I had smoked a few joints and was pretty drunk too. To do my best Nelson Muntz impersonation, breaking the silence with a very loud, unmistakable haha, Mike shrugged and said into the microphone, "What? Don't ask questions if you don't want to hear the answers," and handed the mic back to the guy. The dude sputtered for a few seconds, not sure what to say, before the DJ saved him by kicking in with the music. The haha has me cracking up as I write this. Well freaking done, man. Just a perfectly executed butthole thing to do. No offense. It seems like something I would do if I had just smoked a few joints and gotten a little drunk. My cousin, who was the best man at my other cousin's wedding, they were brothers, said casually, "I hope the worst day of your past is better than the best day of your future." There was stunned silence for a few seconds until he realized his mistake and quickly corrected to, "I hope the best day of your past is worse than the worst day of your future," followed by much laughter at his expense due to his unfortunate gaffe. I went to a wedding where the best man meant to say something along the lines of, "May the best of your todays be the worst of your tomorrows." Instead, he said, "I hope this is the worst day of your life," cheered and put down the microphone. At my twin brother's wedding, I opened with, after thanking the appropriate people. When I first met Tim, I didn't really like him. He was always crowding my space and stealing my nutrients. But after we busted out of that uterine prison, we were perpetual partners in crime. It's things like this that make me wish I had a twin. I bartended a wedding where this was the best man's entire speech, obviously paraphrased. This was years ago. When I was younger, my brother used to push me down the stairs, ridicule me in front of our family and friends, and beat me up on a daily basis. Finally, after 20 years, he finally realized who the best man is. He then shut off the microphone and walked out of the wedding. Went to a wedding last weekend and the father of the bride came out with some pretty amazing lines. He said when the groom came to him and asked for his daughter's hand, he asked if he could take the one that was always in his wallet. Side note, I actually moved to Bangor, Wales for 6 months right after my wedding. We endured 6 months of that joke. It's still funny. We have a Bangor in the state of Maine in the US, so we can do that joke too. Best man said, "It's been said that the best man speech should only be as long as it takes for the groom to orgasm during sex. So, have a great night everybody," and he sat down. He got back up and finished the speech, but it was a pretty hilarious beginning. My brother used this line at my wedding. I wish I had his speech. The entire thing was funny. He worked on it for over 6 months, and let me tell you, it was worth it. I am a wedding DJ. Here is one of the most awesome inappropriate comments I have heard. "Steve chose me to be your MC this evening because Mark stutters too much and Kyle looks too angsty." Kyle was tall and very skinny. There was a quiet over the crowd and then a small group that couldn't help but laugh. The look on the bride's face was priceless. My friend was getting married and it came time for his dad to give a speech. His dad is a retired 3-star general in the US Army, and so his speech was very patriotic. He went on about these two great Americans getting married and America has a bright future, and after he said America for the 4th time, my buddy, we were both groomsmen, yelled out America, frick Iowa, totally brought the house down. Come in a game to save the motherfucking groom yet. This one has some backstory. It was Halloween around the time I met my then future wife. I decided that it would be awesome to dress up like the Crow, scare the heck out of some people, and collect candy with my buddies. Good times were had. Prior to leaving for the night, one of my friends decides we need to take pictures. One thing led to another, and next thing I know, I'm pretending to menace a friend of mine with a kitchen knife in full makeup. Fast forward to our wedding night. My brother-in-law and best man is giving his speech. He opened by saying, "I'll never forget the first time I saw Davron. Well, at least a picture of him. We hadn't met yet. My sister is going on and on about this guy and how great he is, and she hands me this picture of him holding a huge knife. I remember thinking to myself, finally, someone who can handle her brought the place down." A friend got married to a woman he first hooked up with 3 nights before her first marriage. They had a 3-month affair before she divorced husband 1. My other buddy, who was best man, explained in his speech how amazing all this was. Both bride and groom had told their families they started dating after the divorce. LOL. I'm sure that will last. Best man began with, "For weeks now I've been hearing people say how lucky the groom is to be marrying the bride. But I've heard nothing about how lucky the bride is to be marrying the groom." He turned to the groom and said, "That's not good news, buddy. You should take the hint. The bride as well." The crowd loved his speech. Great start. First time best man. 3 weeks ago, the bride chose her brother to be the maid of honor, or man of honor. Looking directly eye to eye with the man of honor, I open up the speech. "Could I please ask our bridesmaids to please stand up?" Death stare from man of honor ensued. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for our beautiful bridesmaids with laughter and cheer. Turned out to be a great icebreaker for the rest of the speech. A close friend of mine wants me to be the man of honor. I hope I don't get crap cause I'm gonna be giving it. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.